Imagine a man so powerful, so arrogant, that no one had ever dared to say the word no to him. A millionaire who believed money could buy respect, love, even destiny itself. But on one unforgettable night, in a glittering ballroom filled with power and pride, a simple waitress with nothing but courage in her heart stood her ground. 2 quiet words from her lips shook his world to the core, and what followed changed both of their lives forever. The words snapped through the ballroom like a razor. "No, thank you." Arthur Vance, 38, perfectly tailored, the kind of billionaire whose name opened doors and shut mouths, actually blinked. The Imperial Hotel's crystal chandeliers hummed above him, the piano curled soft notes through the air, and 100 conversations stalled just enough to catch the echo of her refusal. She stood there in a simple server's uniform, white shirt, black skirt, hair swept into a practical bun, steady hands balancing a tray of flutes. No tremor in her voice. No nervous smile. Just a clear line drawn in the sand. "What's your name?" he asked, voice low, confident, amused. "Mila," she said, meeting his eyes without flinching. "Mila," he repeated, tasting it. "You know who I am." "I do." "Then you know I don't usually ask twice. Have dinner with me tomorrow." Her answer came like fresh air in a room gone stale. "No, thank you." For a heartbeat Arthur thought she must be joking. There was no mockery in her tone, no challenge either, just certainty. He tried the smile that never failed on senators and CEOs. "I'm not used to hearing no." "Then it's a good day to start," she said, and moved on, leaving him with a tray-shaped absence and a throb in his temples he couldn't name, anger or fascination, he wasn't sure. He left the gala after midnight, rode the elevator to his penthouse above Midtown, stared at contracts he couldn't focus on, and heard that same calm refusal echoing in the quiet. "No, thank you." It wasn't contempt. It wasn't a game. It was simply who she was. By morning he made a call. Within an hour a neat report slid across his marble counter. Mila Ortiz, 26. Event staff. Lives in Riverside, Queens. No last name with weight. No connections worth noting. Just a woman who told him the word his world had been built to avoid. He should have let it go. Instead, around 11, he walked into a modest coffee shop in Astoria that smelled like cinnamon and old books. The bell chimed. Mila looked up, froze a fraction of a second, then kept moving, pouring, smiling, steady as a metronome. "What can I get you?" she asked when he reached the counter. "Surprise me." She raised an eyebrow. "This isn't that kind of place, sir. We do coffee, not miracles." She set a cup beneath the machine. "Americano okay?" "Perfect." He leaned on the counter, unbothered by the way his suit didn't match the scuffed floor or the faded chalkboard menu. "Why did you tell me no?" The way his voice wrapped around her name felt too familiar. Still, she didn't look away. "Because life's too short to have dinner with men who think they can have everything." The clink of cutlery and the hiss of steam filled the beat of silence that followed. Arthur tilted his head as if she just landed a clean hit. Interest, not insult, curved his mouth. He sat. He watched. He canceled 2 meetings. She moved like she had a map to the room, refilling cups, remembering orders, offering real smiles to strangers without any calculation behind them. Every few minutes he caught her glancing his way. Every time, she chose not to be impressed. At noon, he stood, pulled a bill from his wallet, and set it on the counter. Mila looked at the money, then at him, eyes flaring. "I don't need your tip to live." "I know," he said. "Consider it an invitation, not to dinner." "Not yet." "Show me your world." Before she could answer, he pushed through the door into the winter light. The bell chimed again. The room swallowed him, and the quiet he left behind hummed with questions Mila didn't want to ask. She wiped the counter anyway, told herself to breathe, and felt something shift, small but undeniable, as if a door had cracked open somewhere she didn't intend to go. Arthur should have gone back to Midtown, to boardrooms and numbers that bent to his will. Instead, a black coupe idled half a block from a narrow walk-up in Riverside, Queens, its tinted window framing his gaze as Mila came down the chipped concrete steps with a canvas tote on her shoulder and a folder of resumes tucked under her arm. Kids chalked galaxies on the sidewalk. A fruit cart bell jingled. The air smelled like bakery sugar and bus exhaust. Everything here was unvarnished, immediate, no velvet ropes, no VIP lists, just the city's pulse without makeup. It made Arthur feel, for the first time in a long time, like he was the one on the outside of the glass. She spotted the car. Her chin rose a notch as she walked straight toward him. "Are you following me now?" He stepped out into the afternoon light, rain threatening somewhere behind the clouds. The gray suit looked absurd against the peeling storefronts. He didn't care. "Maybe," he said, uncharacteristically honest. "Or maybe I'm just curious about the woman who told me no." "You've met her," she said. "You can go back to your world." "That," he said softer than he meant, "is exactly what I'm trying to understand. Why yours seems more real than mine." Mila's laugh was brief, incredulous. "Because in my world, promises aren't props. If we say we'll show up, we show up. We don't buy our way around consequences." The line landed square in his chest. He could have argued. He didn't. "Then show me," he said. "Show me your world." She searched his face for the trick, for the angle he usually hid under charm. She found only stubbornness and something more dangerous, attention. "Fine," she said at last. "But there's no champagne and no one's impressed." "Good," he said and meant it. They walked Roosevelt Avenue beneath the rumble of the 7 train, past a Dominican bakery with guava pastries cooling in the window, a Polish deli selling pierogi from steamed trays, a West African barber shop humming with soccer on an old TV. Mila moved like she belonged to the street and it to her, trading first names and quick smiles, translating a neighborhood's shorthand for a man who had never needed to learn it. "This is Mrs. Selena Alvarez," she said, stopping at a spice stall where glass jars glowed turmeric bright and paprika red. "She's raising 2 grandkids and keeping half this block fed on credit when SNAP runs out. She doesn't put that in a press release." Mrs. Alvarez wiped her hands on an apron and peered up at Arthur. "Your friend is trouble, in the good way," she said, then pressed a small bag of cinnamon sticks into Mila's palm. "For your mom's tea." Mila tucked it away, the thanks in her eyes larger than any tip. They crossed to a produce stand where Mr. Torres, who woke before dawn to buy from the terminal market, was arguing good-naturedly about the price of mangoes with a teenager counting coins. Mila leaned in, made a joke, had them both grinning in seconds. "Dignity," she said quietly as they walked on. "You can't buy it. You can only carry it." Arthur said nothing. He was listening in a way he rarely did, filing nothing, selling nothing. A little boy's sneaker lace trailed like a fuse. Mila crouched, tied it, tapped his shoulder, sent him blasting off with a superhero whoop. Arthur stood there, feeling a strange tug in his ribs he refused to call by name. They ate from paper boats at a food truck, empanadas that burned his fingers and a cane juice slush that turned his tongue cold. "You look ridiculous," she said, watching him chase a drop of sauce with the corner of a napkin. "I feel ridiculous," he admitted. "It's refreshing." She blinked, then snorted, and for 10 seconds the distance between them dropped, not from money, not from hunger, but from the shared recognition that they had both been denying themselves something that wasn't on any menu. By late afternoon, the wind shifted. Street awnings snapped. The light went metallic and thin. Phones across the sidewalk buzzed in chorus. Mila glanced down at her cracked screen. Severe thunderstorm warning. Flash flood risk. Avoid low-lying roads. "Great," she muttered. "If I don't catch the Q32 now, I'm swimming." "I'll drive you," Arthur said, already turning. "No, thank you," she said automatically, like muscle memory. The words didn't carry the same defiance as the first night. They were armor, reflex. He held her look. "Stop fighting me like I'm the problem you have to solve. Let me do one decent thing without strings." Rain found them in the space between breaths, thick drops that went from warning to downpour in seconds. She stood under the truck's tin awning until the gutter overflowed and splashed her ankles. Pride was a wonderful coat in fair weather. In sideways rain, it soaked through. Mila exhaled, flicked water from her wrist, and nodded. Fine. Just a ride. The coupe's doors thunked shut on the storm's roar. Inside it smelled like leather and cedar. Arthur eased into traffic, wipers beating a martial rhythm. Water sheeted across the windshield, turning taillights into long red threads. You shouldn't walk alone in this, he said. You shouldn't tell strangers what to do. She shot back, but the heat had gone from it. Wind bullied the car. A siren Dopplered past, then another. He took Northern Boulevard, then cut to smaller streets, avoiding underpasses already pooling into black mirrors. We'll go around, he said. I'm not risking the overpass. Drop me at the corner by 46th, she said, hand already on her tote. I can run the rest. Absolutely not. His knuckles whitened on the wheel as a flash lit the sky and the immediate crack of thunder answered. Half the block went dark. You'll get swept. I've seen what water does when it wants the low ground. Since when do you know about low ground? She asked, but there was no bite in it, only fatigue. He breathed, fought the part of himself that wanted to bark orders until the world obeyed. Since I stopped looking at it through tinted glass. The flood barricades forced them to loop north. The storm pinned them between closed storefronts and a river that hadn't been a river an hour ago. Arthur checked a map he never used, swore under his breath, recalibrated. 15 minutes later they climbed out of Queens onto higher streets, then higher still, the city slowly falling away behind them as he pointed the car toward the only place he trusted not to drown her, an old cedar-sided place he kept above the Palisades, more quiet than luxury, more memory than show. Mila pressed a palm to the window, tracking the rain's frantic paths. I shouldn't be here, she said half to herself. I have work at dawn. You'll make it, he said. You always do. Lightning stitched the sky. The highway arced along the ridge. Beyond the glass, the river frothed brown and wild. Inside the car, the storm made a small, private world out of engine noise and breath. She didn't look at him when she asked, Why are you really doing this? Curiosity doesn't cancel meetings. Curiosity doesn't sit for hours in a coffee shop. He thought about lying. He didn't. Because I don't know the last time I wanted something I couldn't buy, he said. And because when you tied that kid's sneaker, it felt like the first honest thing I've seen in months. She turned then, eyes searching his face for the joke, the trap. The storm threw a white flare across his features and took it away again. There was no joke. Only a man unused to being unsure. They crested the hill. The house came into view, warm rectangles of light behind rain-streaked glass. Arthur pulled into the drive and killed the engine. The sudden absence of wiper noise made the rain seem louder. Mila sat motionless, fingers curled around the tote strap. I don't owe you anything, she said. I know, he answered. You never did. For a long beat neither moved. Then he popped his door, came around with an umbrella, and opened her side against the wind. They ran the flagstone path in 3 long bounds, shoes splashing, shoulders knocking once, and the door swung wide on heat and wood and the kind of quiet that belonged to places built to outlast weather. She stopped in the entry, water ticking from her hem onto the slate. A fire burned low in a stone hearth. The room wasn't staged, it was lived in, dog-eared paperbacks, a framed photo of a younger man on a dock with a woman whose eyes were the same dark brown as his, a half-finished jigsaw spread on a side table. The sight disoriented her more than any marble and gold ever could have. Arthur shrugged out of his jacket, left it dripping on a chair, and disappeared down the hall. When he returned, he held 2 towels and a white button-down folded over his arm. He handed her the larger towel without comment. She took it, the fabric startlingly soft against rain-chilled skin. I'll put on more wood, he said, crouching at the hearth. Sparks lifted. Shadows ran up the mantel. Mila stood there, towel in her hands, feeling the day catch up to her, the coffee shift, the market, the storm, the car, the door she hadn't meant to walk through. Pride loosened a fraction, not in surrender, but in relief. She set her toe down, slipped off her soaked shoes, and stepped closer to the heat, trying not to notice how the firelight gentled the angles of his face. Outside, the thunder rolled farther off, promising more rain before morning. Inside, a different weather gathered, quieter, stranger, no forecast she trusted. "Coffee?" he said over his shoulder. She almost smiled. "Now that," she said, voice low. "We do." The storm put its fists against the windows while the fireplace stitched warmth back into the room. Arthur handed Mila a mug and took the opposite end of the sofa, leaving a respectful stretch of cushion between them. Steam lifted. Her knuckles were still pink from the cold. His cuff was still rain-spotted where the umbrella had failed them both. "For the record," she said, blowing across the coffee, "I'm not impressed by houses with names." "This one doesn't have one," he said. "It belongs to a man who needed somewhere quiet when the noise he made finally got too loud." She looked around again. Noticed the dog-eared paperbacks, the ancient Red Sox caps slouched on a hook, a photo of a younger Arthur with a woman on a lakeside dock, both mid-laugh, wind mangling their hair. The picture didn't scream money. It whispered memory. "Who is she?" Mila asked before she could stop herself, tipping her chin at the frame. "My sister," he said, surprising her. "Emily. She left for Seattle years ago. We don't talk enough." He paused. "The people I should have made time for didn't come with quarterly reports." Mila tucked one bare foot under her leg, eyes steady. "And the people you did make time for?" "Came with contracts." His mouth tilted. "And exit clauses." Rain hammered. Thunder rolled away like furniture dragged across a floor. The quiet that followed wasn't empty, it was careful. "My mother's insulin ran out last month," Mila said, almost conversationally, which made the sentence land harder. "We stretched it. The clinic helped. Tips helped. I don't have a safety net, so I pretend I'm one." "That why you tie kids' shoes and carry half a block on your back?" he asked. No one had asked her that like it was a good thing before. It unsettled her more than any flirtation. "It's not noble," she said. "It's just, we have each other or we have nothing." Arthur nodded, as if she named something he'd been circling for years without finding the door. A gust rattled the glass. He stood, added a log, knelt until sparks stepped up the chimney like fireflies. "Storm will stall over the river till morning," he said. "You can have the couch. I'll take the chair." She half-laughed. "You own a bed, Vance?" "I own several," he said, straightening. "I'm not offering any." The line disarmed her, and rebuilt the boundary in the same breath. She watched him cross back and sit a little closer, close enough for heat, not for contact. The fire printed small golden translations on his cheekbones. He didn't reach for her. He didn't look away either. "You scare me a little," she admitted, surprising them both. "Because I'm rich?" he asked. "Because you're used to winning." "I don't want to win you," he said, soft and even. "I want to understand you. And I'm trying to figure out how to be a man you'd bother to explain to." Silence thickened. Then he lifted a hand, slow as if approaching a skittish bird, and brushed a damp curl off her temple. The touch was feather-light, reverent, withdrawn at once. "I won't do anything you don't want," he said. Not a promise to perform. A promise to refrain. Something in her eased. Not the guard, that never slept, but the reflex to sharpen everything into a blade. She set the empty mug on the table, pulled the folded white button down over her damp shirt, sleeves swallowing her wrists, and drew the throw across her knees. "Lights stay on," she said. "Deal," he said, and flipped the lamp to low, leaving the room in a soft amber dusk where edges weren't so hard. They talked until the clock forgot itself, about riverside landlords who only fixed what you could threaten them about a summer in Vermont when Arthur learned a chainsaw bites through pride before wood, about the way grief rearranges a room so you can't find the door anymore. She didn't ask who he'd lost. He didn't offer. They let the knotshead sit on the hearth between them and warm itself. Somewhere after midnight her head slipped to the cushion, her breath evening out. Arthur stood, slid a second blanket over her, then sat in the chair with his jacket as a pillow and stared at the ceiling until the storm's rhythm matched his own. Dawn arrived muted, the rain demoted to a thin gray drumbeat. The fireplace dozed in embers. Mila woke to the shape of a room that had behaved itself. No lines crossed. No debts incurred. A relief she felt in her ribs. She folded the borrowed shirt and set it on the arm of the chair where Arthur, barefoot and rumpled in a t-shirt, was already awake, hands wrapped around a mug, gaze out the glass to where the river ran brown and swollen below the ridge. "I need to go," she said, voice husky with sleep. "I have a shift." "I'll drive you," he said. "I can catch the bus," she countered. "The bus is underwater," he said, not unkind. "Let me do this one thing and call it even." "Even," she repeated, as if tasting the word for traps. "There's no even here." He accepted that. "Then call it transport." They didn't talk much on the way back, just weather and detours and the marvel of an upstate sky that could pretend, for a second, it hadn't tried to drown the city 6 hours ago. When he eased to the curb outside her walk-up, she unbuckled but didn't reach for the handle. "Last night," she started, then shook her head. "Thank you for not turning it into something else." "I'm learning," he said. "It's slow." She nodded once, the acknowledgement sharper than any compliment. "I don't date storms," she said. "Or men who think they can outshout them." "Understood," he said, accepting the guard and the ground rules both. She pushed the door open, paused in the wet brightness. "Whatever world you're trying to understand," she added, not unkindly, "it doesn't start with owning things. It starts with letting them go?" he asked. "It starts with meaning what you say," she said, and was gone, feet quick on wet concrete, tote angled against her hip. Arthur watched the stairwell swallow her, and felt something unfamiliar take up space under his ribs. It wasn't conquest. It wasn't panic. It was a decision forming the way weather forms, pressure shifting, air moving, a front rolling in from a place you can't see yet. By the time he merged onto the highway back toward Manhattan, the shape of it was clear enough to say out loud to no one in particular. Then change the terms. He didn't know where to start. He knew where not to end. The city smelled like wet concrete and hot coffee the morning Arthur decided to change the terms. He stood at the wall of glass in his midtown penthouse, a mug cooling in his hand, the river still the color of bruised steel from the storm. He'd spent a career converting pressure into leverage. For once, he let it sit on his chest until it turned into clarity. He picked up his phone. "Martin," he told his attorney. "List the yacht. List the house in Miami and the flat in London. Today. And draft paperwork for a philanthropic trust, Riverside Commons. Mission, after-school programs, a clinic partnership for insulin support, food security, workforce training. I want first dollars out the door in Queens within the week." On the other end, stunned silence. "Arthur, selling that fast will crater." "Sell," he repeated. "I'm done hiding behind inventory. Next call, a forensic accountant named Priya Menon. I want to crawl through every contract signed in the last 12 months. Especially anything touched by Lyle. Graham Lyle, smile like a sales brochure, handshake like a cufflink, had been Arthur's partner for 6 years. It was Priya's spreadsheets, not Arthur's instincts, that traced the rot, shell vendors, kickbacks, a non-compete booby trap to strangle their cash flow the instant Arthur blinked. At noon, Arthur walked into the conference room where Lyle was waiting with a smirk and a pen. Priya was already there, laptop open to a map of money with arrows that all pointed to the same drain. "This is a misunderstanding," Lyle said smoothly when she finished. "You know how aggressive procurement can look. It looks like theft," Arthur said, voice so level Lyle faltered for the first time. "Your keycard stops working in an hour. And if you so much as step within 50 feet of a client, my counsel will bring the kind of rain you can't outdrive." He didn't enjoy it. He didn't grandstand. He just ended it. By 4, the yacht broker had wired a deposit. By 6, The Miami realtor had a cash buyer who collected ocean views the way some men collected watches. The numbers didn't soothe him. They only cleared the fog enough for him to see what mattered. He texted Mila. Public place. Daylight. 10 minutes. Please. She chose a bench outside PS 147, where a mural of shooting stars flaked in the corners and a crossing guard kept up a one-woman war with speeding SUVs. She arrived in a thrift store peacoat and a tired ponytail, a canvas tote pulling at her shoulder. You have 8, she said, because promises were measured at street level. I'm not here to buy time, he said. I'm here to tell you something I haven't told anyone who couldn't monetize it. Her chin tipped, skeptical but listening. I'm close to broke, he said. No throat clearing, no spin. Not on paper. You can always sell paper, but in truth. My partner gutted us. I signed things I shouldn't have and believed things I wanted to. If I can't unwind it, I lose the company in 3 months. Wind slid down the block. Somewhere a siren sighed. Mila didn't blink. Why are you telling me? Because you're the only person in my life who doesn't want anything I can give, he said, and the admission tasted like humility and metal. And because last night I realized I don't know the last time I did anything that wasn't for advantage. That's your storm, she said quietly. Not mine. I know. He drew a breath that scraped on the way in. I'm selling what I should have sold years ago. I started a trust for your neighborhood, after school space, clinic support, job training. Real things, not ribbon cuttings. Her eyes didn't soften. If anything, they sharpened. Don't do it for me. I'm doing it because for the first time in years I can see what has weight, and what is just shine, he said. You held up a mirror. I don't like what it showed. I'd like to. A third grader's backpack thunked the back of the bench as he ran past, laughing. Mila watched him go, then looked back at Arthur. You can't donate your way out of being a person, she said. You have to be one. Consistently. When no one is taking pictures. I hear you, he said. And he meant I accept your terms. She stood. I don't date storms, she repeated from the car, gentler now but no less firm. And I can't be the project you fixed to prove you changed. Mila. Change starts when the talking stops, she said. Mean what you say. She walked, the tote bumping her hip, the crossing guard lifting a hand to stop a car that didn't want to stop. Arthur stayed on the bench and let the next 90 seconds sting, because pain, properly used, is a chisel. He went to work. He sat with Mrs. Selena Alvarez in the back of her spice shop and asked about insulin copays and which families fell between the cracks. He took notes when she told him the after-school hours that actually saved parents' shifts and the snack that got eaten, peanut butter crackers, versus the one that got thrown out, celery. He didn't correct. He didn't pitch. He shut up and listened. He signed a short-term lease on a vacant bodega 2 doors from Mr. Torres's produce stand. He rolled paint until his shoulders burned, learning that primer is forgiveness and that listening to a playlist not chosen by an algorithm can make a room feel like it belongs to more than one person. He called the clinic director at Elmhurst Hospital and said, What do you need to keep people out of the ER for diabetes complications? When the answer was fridges, educators, and predictable funding, he wired the first tranche and set a schedule for the rest. He met with Priya every morning at 7, tearing out booby traps from contracts he'd signed, replacing them with plain language an honest person could live with. He wrote 3 apology emails to vendors he'd squeezed for sport. None of them owed him forgiveness. He sent them anyway. On the second night, he drove past Mila's street and didn't slow down. On the third, he didn't drive past at all. He learned that restraint is an action, not the absence of one. A week later, he showed up at the coffee shop in jeans and a navy hoodie that had never seen a yacht. He ordered, paid, tipped the way normal people tip, and sat by the window without looking at the door every time it opened. When Mila finally came on shift, she clocked him, hesitated, then moved through the room like gravity had just a little more to say. What is this? She asked, arms folded, not unkind. Proof of life, he said. I didn't come to talk. I came to be where the coffee tastes like something and the rules aren't mine. She studied him the way she used to study price tags, looking for the seam, the markup, the lie. He held still. He didn't sell. He didn't plead. The space between them wasn't empty, it was waiting. The bell on the door chimed. A kid spilled hot chocolate. Arthur stood, grabbed a stack of napkins, and knelt to help before the mess could spread, getting cocoa on the sleeve of a sweatshirt that had cost $30 and already felt better on his skin than anything Moncler ever made. The kid's mom mouthed thank you. He nodded like it wasn't an event. Mila watched him mop, watched him stand, watched him carry the empty cup to the trash without theatrics. Something inside her shifted half an inch, the way old wood does when it decides it might hold a different weight. Tomorrow, she said, surprising them both. I finish my shift at the after-school program at 4. If you want to know what matters, show up with a box of crayons and no speeches. I'll bring 2, he said. Don't bring cameras, she said. I won't, he said. Outside, the evening light broke through cloud and turned the wet street into a run of gold. Inside, he sat back down and for the first time in a long time, felt like the thing he wanted couldn't be expedited and shouldn't be. He'd have to arrive the slow way, carrying the weight himself, one box of crayons at a time. The after-school program lived in a cinderblock gym that smelled like floor wax and orange slices. Paper constellations dangled from the rafters. A boom box in the corner whispered Motown through one faulty speaker. At 4 sharp, Arthur stepped through the double doors in a navy hoodie and beat-up sneakers, a paper bag gripped in both hands like contraband. Mila looked up from the sign-in table where she was matching names to faces. No cameras. No entourage. Just a man who'd chosen to be ordinary on purpose. You made it, she said. He set the bag down and pulled out 3 50-packs of crayons, 2 boxes of fat markers, a roll of masking tape, and a stack of construction paper that could have roofed a small house. You said crayons, no speeches? She tried not to smile. Then start with the art table. Blue bin's broken, use the green. He went where he was told. Within minutes a semicircle of third-graders drafted him into a project that began as draw a city, and quickly evolved, as all good plans do, into building one, cereal box skyscrapers, masking tape roads, a river cut from butcher paper, and a cardboard bridge that kept collapsing until Arthur knelt, eye level with the engineers, and said, Let's triangulate. He drew 2 lines with a stubby pencil. Triangles don't quit when rectangles do. The bridge held. The room cheered. From the snack table, Mila watched him choose the seat on the floor instead of the chair, watched him slide the markers to the kid who always ended up last, watched him forget to check his phone. It found him anyway, buzzing on the bleacher behind him. He didn't move. 2 more, insistent. He still didn't move. At 5:10, trouble rippled. Jaden, a wiry 7-year-old with a gap-toothed grin and a Spider-Man t-shirt, went quiet, his hands shaking as he tried to peel the wrapper from a granola bar. Mila registered the signs the way a firefighter reads smoke. She was on her feet before the wobble turned to sway. Hey, champ, she said, crouching. You got your meter with you. Jaden's eyes glassed. He shook his head. Arthur was there a beat later, voice even. Juice? He asked, already scanning. Mila pointed to the supply drawer. He sprinted, came back with a box, pierced the foil, and handed it over without fanfare. Jaden sipped. The color climbed back into his cheeks like dawn. You're okay, Mila said, counting under her breath. Keep sipping. Arthur sat cross-legged on the floor and told Jaden about the time he duct-taped a water bottle to a leaf blower, and invented a machine that could only sort of blow bubbles. The other kids leaned in. The moment passed without drama because someone had noticed in time. Mila's shoulders dropped a fraction. Jaden's mother arrived 10 minutes early, breathless from the bus. When Mila explained, she sagged with relief. Thank you, she said to both of them, hand over her heart. Thank her, Arthur said, thumb hooking at Mila. She saw it first. By 6, the gym had emptied to echoes and scuff marks. Arthur helped stack chairs and carry 2 overfilled trash bags to the dumpster behind the building where the air smelled like rain and laundry steam. That was when the man in the windbreaker appeared at the mouth of the alley, portfolio under one arm, apology ready in his eyes. "Mr. Vance?" he asked. "You've been served." Arthur took the envelope, the weight of it as familiar as a bad habit. Temporary restraining order. Motion to freeze disbursements from the trust. Lyle's counsel had worked fast. He slid it with a thumbnail, scanned, and exhaled. It wasn't fear that crossed his face. It was the recognition of an old opponent putting his pieces on the board. He folded the papers and slid them into his hoodie pocket like trash he'd take out later. "You don't have to be the guy who handles everything alone," Mila said from the doorway, surprising herself. He looked up, surprised too. "I'm not," he said. "Not anymore." They walked to Riverside Commons, the vacant bodega he'd rented, its roll-down gate rattling like a snare when he lifted it. Inside, 2 sawhorses, 3 rollers and a paint tray, the front half of a wall covered in a base coat the color of a clean page. Arthur handed Mila a brush, took one for himself, and for a while the only sound was the squeak of bristles turning gray cinder block into possibility. Neighbors drifted in on curiosity and the promise of something new. Mr. Torres leaned in the doorway with a crate of bruised but sweet peaches. Mrs. Alvarez brought a thermos of cinnamon tea and set it on an upturned milk crate like a sacrament. A lanky teen in a Yankees cap, Miguel, asked if he could design a logo. "No pay," he said before anyone could ask. "Just want the practice," Arthur said. "You'll invoice me like a professional and I'll pay you like one." Miguel's grin flashed. As the wall dried, Mila sketched with charcoal, broad strokes, confident lines, turning blank into a map, a river curving under a bridge, a skyline made of cereal box buildings, a line of small hands reaching for stars that weren't scattered but organized, as if the city itself had learned to hold them up. She pressed the nub into Arthur's palm. "Your turn." "Where?" "Bottom row," she said. "That's where the adults go when they're doing it right." He knelt, pressed his hand into a tray of ochre, and left a print along the base where little palms would stack above his. As he stood, paint smudged his wrist. He didn't wipe it yet. His phone buzzed again. He checked, Priya. "Hearing at 9 a.m. tomorrow. They're going for an emergency freeze. We're ready if you are." He typed back, "I'm coming. File the exhibits. Keep the trust liquid for autopay we set for Elmhurst. If the freeze hits, we fight for carve-outs." He put the phone away and looked over at Mila, who was washing brushes in a plastic tub, sleeves pushed to her elbows, a stripe of charcoal on her cheekbone like a captain's mark. "Tomorrow might get loud," he said. "Loud doesn't scare me," she answered. "Dishonest does." "Then I'll be loud and honest," he said. She considered him for a long beat, the way you test a step on a bridge you built yourself. "If you walk out of that courtroom and the first place you come is here," she said, chin indicating the room, the neighborhood, the mural, "then maybe we talk about you meeting my mom." He didn't cover the surge that ran through him. He let it show and kept it simple. "Deal." They worked until the last of the paint lines softened and the room took on the hush of spaces that know they're becoming useful. When they locked up, the evening had gentled. Kids chalked fresh galaxies on the sidewalk under sodium lights. Someone down the block tuned a guitar. The G-string refused, stubborn as hope. At the corner, a sedan idled. The window slid down. Lyle leaned into the gap, cologne arriving before his words. "You always did like a crowd, Art," he called. "Shame about tomorrow. Ice gets real cold when you're not on the yacht." Arthur didn't walk over. He didn't trade barbs. He just lifted a paint-striped hand and pointed, not at Lyle, but at the mural glowing through the storefront glass, a dozen small hands reaching for a sky that bent down to meet them. "See you in court," he said, and turned his back. Mila fell into step beside him. "You had 100 chances to turn this into a scene," she said. "I used one to turn it into a choice," he said. They reached her block. He didn't ask to come up. She didn't offer. On the stoop, she paused, the questions in her eyes neither soft nor sharp, just real. "You're not the man from the hotel anymore," she said. "I don't know exactly who you are yet, but I'm willing to keep watching. Tomorrow, after the hearing," he said, "I'll be here. With cinnamon tea from Mrs. Alvarez. No speeches. Bring a receipt for those crayons," she said deadpan. "We track everything." He laughed, startled and grateful. "I'm learning." She climbed the steps, keys chiming. At the top she looked back once, as if to memorize the frame, the man in the hoodie with paint on his knuckles, the street that had started accepting him, the mural behind his shoulder like a promise he intended to keep. He stayed on the sidewalk until her light came on, then turned toward the train, papers in his pocket, paint on his wrist, and a morning shaped like a fight he finally wanted for the right reasons. By 9 a.m., the courthouse on Center Street smelled like old paper and wet umbrellas. Arthur wore a navy suit that fit him but didn't announce him. Priya Menon slid a binder across the table, tabs like flags. Martin, his attorney, whispered last-minute instructions he didn't need. On the other side, Graham Lyle lounged in a pinstripe and a grin, flanked by two litigators whose cufflinks cost more than a month's rent on Roosevelt Avenue. "Good morning," said Judge Elena Park, settling behind the bench. "We're here on Law Partners et al. Versus Vance Holdings et al., emergency motion to freeze assets, including a philanthropic trust formed last week, Riverside Commons." "Counsel?" Lyle's lawyer rose. "Your Honor, my client seeks to prevent a reckless dissipation of assets to frustrate forthcoming judgments. Mr. Vance is converting liquid holdings into non-recoverable charitable outflows." Priya stood. "Your Honor, the trust's purpose isn't to hide assets. It's to fund insulin support at Elmhurst, after-school care, and workforce training in Queens. We've submitted affidavits from the hospital's clinic director and program coordinators. We also submitted exhibits detailing Mr. Lyle's self-dealing, shelf vendors, circular invoices, and a non-compete provision weaponized to choke cash flow the moment Mr. Vance questioned him." Judge Park paged through the binder, expression giving away nothing. "Mr. Vance, do you wish to make a statement?" Arthur rose. He didn't perform. He didn't look at Lyle. He looked at the judge. "Your Honor, I signed things I shouldn't have and believed people I shouldn't have. That's on me. The trust isn't a shield, it's a commitment. If the court needs oversight, appoint a monitor. Carve out what you think is appropriate. But please don't punish a neighborhood for my mistakes." Silence settled, heavy as felt. Judge Park closed the binder. "Motion to freeze all assets is denied. The court will appoint a temporary monitor for Vance Holdings and Riverside Commons to ensure disbursements are legitimate and scheduled. The trust's current auto payments to Elmhurst and the after-school program will continue. Mr. Lyle, the court finds preliminary evidence of breach of fiduciary duty. Expedited discovery is granted. We'll reconvene in 3 weeks." Lyle's jaw tightened. His lawyer whispered something that didn't fix it. Outside on the steps, cameras gathered like crows. Arthur took one step toward the microphones, then stopped. He wasn't here to audition. He texted Priya a thank you, texted Martin no press, and got into a cab with a paper bag between his shoes, cinnamon leaking through like a promise. He went straight to Riverside Commons. The roll-up gate was halfway open. Inside, the base coat had cured to a clean, matte brightness. The charcoal sketch Mila had made the night before, river, bridge, small hands reaching, waited for paint. Mrs. Alvarez sat on an upside-down milk crate, pouring cinnamon tea into mismatched mugs. Miguel was on a ladder, fussing with a tape line. Mila stepped from the back room with a sleeve of paint rollers under one arm. She froze when she saw him, reading his face before his words. "How loud?" she asked. "Loud enough that we'll have a monitor," he said, holding up the paper bag. "But not so loud that the trust gets muzzled." He set the bag on the paint-splattered table and pulled out a receipt, crisp and folded. "For the crayons," he said, sliding it across with a crooked smile. "Line itemed." Mila took it, studied it, then tucked it into a manila envelope labeled in neat block letters, supplies, receipts. The system wasn't for show. It was how things stood up. "What now?" she asked. "We paint," he said. "And then, if you're still willing, I meet your mom." For a beat she said nothing. Then she nodded. "Wash your hands. You still have courthouse on them." They painted. Neighborhood air drifted through the open gate, frying onions from a food cart, a car stereo with bass turned up too far, the soft percussion of sneakers on sidewalk. Kids stopped to watch their future spread across the wall in blues and golds. Mrs. Alvarez clucked at Arthur's uneven lines until he slowed down and let Miguel show him how to feather the edge. Pride, it turned out, was a terrible brush. At 2, Mila checked her phone. "She's up," she said, meaning her mother. "We can go." They walked 3 blocks to a brick building with a shiny new ramp and a lobby that always smelled faintly of cabbage rolls. Mila knocked on a door with a taped-on note, "Please knock." Bell broken. It opened to a woman in a floral house dress and a braided bun shot through with silver. Her eyes were Mila's eyes, older, lined not with softness but with weather. "Mama," Mila said, stepping in to kiss her cheek. "This is Arthur." "Senor Vance," her mom said, careful. "My daughter says you brought her home in a storm and didn't make a mess out of it." "I did my best," he said. "Ma'am, I brought cinnamon sticks. For tea." Her gaze flicked to the bag and back, weighing courtesies the way a field medic weighs bandages. She stepped aside. "You both wash hands. Then you sit." The apartment was small and immaculate. A couch with crocheted armrest covers. 2 framed photos on the wall, one of Mila in a cap and gown, grin too large for the frame. One of a man with a mechanic's hands and a smile that belonged to someone not yet hurt by the world. On the counter, an insulin pen humbly claimed space next to a chipped sugar bowl. They drank tea at a table that had seen 1,000 receipts and 1,000 prayers. Mila's mother asked 3 questions Arthur had no good way to dodge. "What do you want with my daughter?" "Her time," he said, honest enough to make the room tilt. "And a chance to be the kind of man who deserves it." "What happens when the papers and lawyers come for you?" "I go to court and I come back here," he said. "In that order?" "And when the money is gone?" He didn't flinch. "Then I keep going. I know people who confuse wealth with value. I was one of them. I don't want to be anymore." She looked at her daughter. Mila didn't prompt, she didn't rescue. She let the silence do its work. Finally her mother nodded once, a verdict and a benediction both. "Okay," she said. "But you don't get to be a hero in my kitchen. You take the trash with you on your way out." "Yes, ma'am," Arthur said, already standing. On the way back down, Mila bumped his shoulder with hers. "She likes you," she said. "That was her like you face." "It looked like a test," he said. "It was both," she said. "Welcome to real life." The days that followed didn't blur. They stacked. Paint mornings, clinic meetings, contracts unwound line by stubborn line. The monitor assigned by the court, a brisk woman named Angela Cho, came by twice a week, checked ledgers, asked questions no PR firm could answer, and left with a curt nod that felt better than any headline. 3 weeks later, the hearing went worse for Lyle and better for the truth. Priya's exhibits mapped money like arteries. A forensic tech walked the judge through shell companies with names that tried too hard to sound respectable. Judge Park extended the monitor, denied Lyle's expanded freeze, and hinted at sanctions that made even Lyle's lawyers blanch. After court, Arthur didn't celebrate. He bought 4 folding tables and 2 second-hand mini-fridges for the clinic, and carried them one by one up a flight of stairs with Miguel and Mr. Torres, both pretending they weren't impressed by his willingness to sweat. On a Thursday glazed with late light, Riverside Commons opened its doors. There were no ribbon-cutting giant scissors. The kids would have turned them into swords. Instead, a line of third-graders held a long paper chain they'd made themselves and tore it at the middle, shrieking like champagne corks. Miguel unveiled the logo, Bridge, River, handful of stars, that looked like the mural had put on a tie. Elmhurst sent a nurse educator in scrubs to run a class on hypoglycemia. Mrs. Alvarez set out aluminum trays of arroz con pollo and a vat of cinnamon tea that could heal a fight. Mr. Torres handed out peaches soft enough to eat out of hand, juice running down kids' wrists. Parents signed their names on a clipboard and wrote, "Shift schedule," in the column where it mattered. A reporter drifted close, pad poised. Arthur waved him toward Mrs. Alvarez. "She's the story," he said, and stepped out of the frame. When the reporter insisted, Arthur said, "Print the hours. People need to know when we're open. And put the Venmo." The man blinked, then scribbled. It wasn't a quote that would light up Twitter. It was one that would put snacks on a table. "This is what you wanted?" Mila asked later, when the noise shrank to the friendly kind and dusk washed the storefront gold. "It's what I didn't know I needed," he said. They slipped outside to the narrow strip of shade under a young sycamore. A breeze lifted paper cups along the curb, chasing them until a volunteer caught them with a laugh. Through the glass, the mural glowed: river, bridge, hands, stars, and on the bottom row, adult handprints in a line like a foundation. His was there, ochre and a little crooked. Mila rested her shoulder against his. "I was wrong about one thing," she said. "Only one?" he teased, and her elbow found his ribs. "I said I don't date storms," she went on. "Turns out, I don't date men who make storms. Weather I can handle." She took his hand, ink and paint still ghosting his knuckles. "You keep showing up like this, and we'll call it a forecast." He turned to say something funny and failed. What came out was simple. "I'm in." She touched his jaw with the back of her fingers, the gesture small and devastating. "So am I. But remember, this isn't about what you built. It's about what you're building." He nodded. The difference lived under his sternum now, not on a slide deck. They kissed then, not a fireworks display, not a victory lap, something slower, rooted. The city went on around them, sirens, bus brakes, a kid dragging a stick along the fence. But inside that kiss, lives rearranged themselves with the quiet rightness of furniture finally where it belonged. When they pulled apart, a knot of kids had gathered at the window to watch their reflections in the glass, mostly theirs, a little of the grown-ups behind them. Jaden spotted Arthur and waved, juice box in hand. Arthur waved back. Mila waved, too, then pressed her forehead to his shoulder for a breath he felt everywhere. Inside, someone had hung a small metal sign at the back of the room. Miguel must have done it while no one was looking. The letters weren't fancy, but they were straight. "Nothing is small if it's done with love." Arthur read it, and almost laughed at himself, the old version who would have ordered a custom plaque in walnut with inlaid brass and a press release to match. The new version stood there with paint under a thumbnail and cinnamon in his throat and thought this: losing the wrong things had made room for the right ones. Later, as they closed up, rolling the gate down, counting markers back into their bins, logging receipts in neat block letters, Mila pulled a folded sheet from her tote and slid it across the table. "Weekly budget," she said. "If you want to help, start here." He scanned it. Snack costs. Art supplies. Tutor stipends. A line for emergency Uber funds for parents stuck on late shifts. No flourish. No vanity. Just the weight of real life in numbers small enough to carry. "Copy that," he said. "And, for the record, I kept the receipt for the folding tables." She smiled, tired and bright. "Now we're talking." They stepped onto the sidewalk. The sky over Queens was that impossible haze blue you only get on nights when a storm has wrung the air clean. He took her hand without asking if he could, and she let him, not because he'd won anything, but because he'd chosen to mean what he said, when no one was watching, when people were, and when it would have been easier not to. They turned toward the train. Behind them, the mural caught the last light and held it, the bridge solid, the river moving, a row of small hands reaching for a sky that, maybe for the first time, was reaching back.